Welcome to the Dirt Trail Running Podcast. My name is Michelle Hartwig, and I am your host. And I am here with my co-host, Crystal the Pistol.
Hi. It feels weird because we haven't done one of these for a while. And I have this light that I really just want to cut off, but I can't. Maybe I'll just sit like this the whole time.
You're an angel with a light shining on you.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
I want to introduce another host that we have with us tonight. This is Ornery. And how do I do this? So I've got it in the mirror. So if you're watching us on YouTube, this little guy is so cute. And Robin Steffens, she knitted this for us. It has a little backpack on it, a bib number 1. It says OMR. It's got a little water bottle. And the backpack even has a straw to drink out of. And little shorts. I mean, look at how cute Ornery is.
Oh, hi, Ornery. We love you. You're so cute.
And so she wrote a note that was really nice. It says, "This is Ornery, and he loves to run trails. If it gets dark, please turn on his headlamp with the button in his pack." Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell. That's a little light. He has a headlamp and and you turn it on. I mean,
can you turn it on?
Yeah, I don't really know how.
Well, no.
I think that I need to get a new battery because I haven't been able to turn on the light. I should have probably did that before today. But when she knit him, she says that Ornery told her that he would be happiest at the trailhead. So we're like, he's part of the show. We're bringing him here. He's just gonna sit right here by me and keep me safe.
Awesome.
So, and also my son's going to be reminding us to tell everybody to subscribe. So if you're watching this, just hit that subscribe button. It's important to us. We need to get to 1,000 because there's stuff that we can do with 1,000 followers that we can't do without. So please help us get to 1,000. And yeah, so that's enough about us and what we got going on here. We've got a really super cool guest tonight, Greg Sturdy from right around the Midwest area, Rockford area. Hi, Greg.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I know you thought twice about it when we invited you.
Yeah, like I told Loretta when she asked me, I was like, well, I'm a fairly gregarious and outgoing person, but I'm not also the most sociable person. So it's one of those things that I like being with people. I gather good energy from being in groups and things, but I'm not necessarily the most sociable person. And so it was, well, what am I gonna offer? I'm a newer runner and all that. And then I thought some of the interviews you guys have done and some of the other podcasts, I always enjoy actually learning more about the people in the one-on-one sense, as you've done with a lot of your runners that you've had on. And it's just, you always find something to connect with people. And that's something in my life with a lot of my traveling and business work that I've done, that I always try to connect with people with food and drink, and now with a bit with sport, being a little bit of a runner now. And so it kind of brought me back around to, even if I'm not the most interesting or accomplished person by any means in the running field, at least somebody will go, oh, hey, I have background with that person, or I can connect with them in some way.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me. I'm honored to be on.
Oh, good. Yeah, I agree that like everyone, like there's something about what we're going through, like work-wise or struggles, a great runner, a beginner, back of the pack runner. There's something that every person can help another runner, help another person thinking about running. And we want to be a welcoming community, and I love getting to know everybody. I feel like you and your wife, Christina, I noticed you guys most right away because you were like, every single time I'd be like making an ad or like working on the website, your guys, I would pull your guys' picture up. You're like the most photogenic people on the trail any place you go.
Yep. I would agree with that 1,000%.
And then it's even funny. So when I took over Brooklyn and Arbor Ridge races, I inherited all the photographs, and I was looking for good photographs to build the websites for those. And I even pulled your guys' photographs on that.
Well, glad we could be good marketing material for you, Michelle. You were one of the first RDs that we met when I started running, and then when Chris and I started getting more into the longer distances and everything. You were one of the first RDs we met with. You were out at one of the Fleet Feet events for Rockford with Melissa, and we met you there. And you at the time you were still up in Scrolled Up Butter and Tailwind and everything like that. And you were just starting your races off, and you were just such a warm, welcoming person that had so much background that we didn't understand necessarily, but you had a lot of really good tips and tricks for running. So we were just really drawn to you for everything. And we've just kind of hooked into the bandwagon with you and your team because you do bring such a good vibe to it. And so we have a good time at your races and the events you've always put on. So we just have a blast with it. We're big goofballs is what we are. We're large children. So
yeah, I think I remember meeting you guys. Didn't Christina win her name was the one drawn and won like a Frozen Gnome entry or something?
Yeah, and she didn't want to even enter, and I entered her name for her because she's like, I don't want to do a winter race. And I'm like, well, I want to do the winter race. She's like, great.
So did she end up doing it?
Oh yeah, she did. That was our first Frozen Gnome with you guys, and so we got out for it and everything. But yeah, she's not much of a winter runner. She's gotten much more into it now because, she has to keep the training up for the spring stuff. But she's still not much of a winter runner outdoors. But she'll do it. She's tough as nails and grinds it out. But it's definitely not her cup of tea to be out in the slush and the snow and everything. She'd much rather be out in a 90-degree day in the middle of summer sweating to death, whereas I'm a big hairy monster and I die if it's over 50 kind of thing. So
well, Crystal's all with her on the hot weather racing.
Yeah, I don't like winter, so you probably won't ever see me out there in the winter. I'm kind of a hermit crab. I'm on the treadmill a lot in the winter.
Yeah, see, and I rather enjoy the snow-covered trails, and that it is more desolate in the winter that way too. That it's so dynamic in the cold and things like that. That it's really actually something that I'm not originally from the Midwest. I'm from Los Angeles area, so I never grew up with snow nearby because I'm from the northwest end of LA County, and I could go to it and I'd snowboard in it and things like that, but I never grew up dealing with what is Midwest winters and things like that. So when I came out to school here, it was, oh, so this is what winter is. And it was kind of novel and also a real witch, but kind of learned to deal with it in the snow and the shoveling and cleaning up things and keeping, walking after your car and slippery roads and all that. And so then getting into more of the sports and the outdoor stuff, the extreme weather thing of it has been more, I guess, novel and engaging to me in that respect of it's something you can actually do in winter versus going on the treadmill, which I want to bang my head against the wall most of the time. I'd rather go out in ice or sleet or hail, frankly, than I would be on a treadmill. But I will do a treadmill if I have to.
Yeah. I'm actually, when you talked about meeting me, and it doesn't seem like, maybe that was like, 3 years ago, possibly?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm surprised that you were a new runner then. I didn't catch that vibe from you at all. You guys are, you and your wife are both very, very fit. So what were you doing before you came into the trail world?
I actually only started running 3.5 years ago. Christina said she wanted to do the Rockford 10K, and she'd never done. I think she'd only done maybe one 10K before, and then she said she wanted to do that. She asked if I wanted to, just thinking, you want to participate. But I had only ever done 2 5Ks before that, and I couldn't run or jog the whole way through them. So I didn't run, and I said, well, sure. She goes, well, you're going to actually have to train and get off your ass for this. And, you can't just slide into a 10K like you can a 5 and expect to be okay. So I said, well, make a plan and I'll start training. And so I started in spring of 2017 is when I actually first started running consistently. And she got me into it with the old, anybody can run a mile thing from her, I think her high school coach or something. It's like, anybody can run a mile. You just run as far as you can in that mile. And then if you can't make it, you walk, and then you start again. And she dragged me to jog the whole mile the first time. And from there it was add 10%, right? Simple, basic, old school. And it kind of took off. I started liking running with her and going. But yeah, I'm a new runner. And before that, I mean, I hit the gym here and there, but I generally didn't work out a lot. A little bit of biking here and there, but pretty rare by comparison to like the level of sports that I'm into now with running and the kind of distances and hours that I put in. I wasn't necessarily that active beforehand. Chris was, she'd run here and there, but shorter distance and stuff like that. But myself, not particularly, just between work and then the gym a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that's very surprising to me. And what a quick build-up, because you just did your first 100-mile race.
Mm-hmm.
So in 3 years. So I'm like, how did you transition from that 10K to like starting to do, ultra distances?
Really, it was like I said, and with Christine and I, we're both very different personalities in things. I'm more the flighty dreamer, kind of go at it and just hammer at things kind of person, and she's much more the grounded one. So we work well that way. That she's even more organized in planning than I am in that respect. Of she's just very diligent and very organized, and it's more so than I am. And I think I'm decent, but there's my wife's level, and it's that uber percentile. So she kind of kept me in check with 10%, right? Starting at the 10K training, following a basic 10K training plan, and then going up from there with the mileage and just nibbling it at a time, 10% at a time kind of thing. Okay, well, this is how much mileage you did this week, how many runs, pick it up a little bit with 10% and keep going and setting goals that were realistic. A 10K, okay, well, then a half marathon is after that, and you can progress up to that. And then half marathon, I kind of skipped over the marathon, if you will, and played around more in the trail distances, trying to get ready for the Hobo series that we have in the Rockford Roadrunners, which for those that don't know, there's the Hobo Triple Crown is a 10K night race on Friday night, a 25K on Saturday, and then a 50K on Sunday, but there's also a 25K option on Sunday, and that's called the Triple Crown Light. And so that kind of running, that progression and what I got into with reading for it was more trail running and ultra running. I shouldn't say trail running, but ultra running was more about time on the feet and repetitive distance and getting into repeated runs, basically running tired all the time, kind of a thing, building up that stamina in the legs and the lungs. And so it wasn't necessarily that bad to kind of keep just knocking out runs. And so if you did a 6 on Saturday, you do a 6 on Sunday, and it's tough to do doubles like that necessarily, or doubles in a day. And so I kind of just started nibbling at it and pushing up towards that Hobo Light, which is those 225Ks were the big distance, and kind of, half marathon, then the Hobo Light, which is that 25K at that 15 and a half. And then from there decided in 2019 to try going for the 50K. And I did that at Ice Age right before when I was at your race, Michelle, the Kettle 50 with Ethan and James. And 2019, I kind of lit it off on fire and had a bunch of races that weren't planned because I wasn't planning to run Kettle, but Ethan wanted to run Kettle, and I said, well, sure. We also did a little fat ass event that we did a 12-hour race, which was a big jump. So 2019, I kind of burned the candle pretty hard, and I think I did 6 50Ks or more in that year. So kicked it off pretty bad. And then I did the 100K at Mines of Spain in 19, which was my big goal race for that year, which is a wonderful race, but kind of just went after that. And the training plan from summer just bled into it really well. And my legs held up and my stamina held up to keep at it. It kind of just rolled from race to race into the 100K. And then I kind of tapered down in the end of 19 a little bit before I tried to hit Frozen Otter in 20, and I DNF'd that in the beginning of 20. So from there, last year was kind of a thrown off year. Most of the races got canceled, but did a couple of 50K and 50 milers, and then a bunch more training for the 100 miler in November that I signed up for. So at T-Bunk.
I heard you talking about a couple friends, so like Ethan and James. So like, one thing that makes, like what I know when I started running ultras, I actually can barely remember, like what made me know that they're out there. Like, so, you and Christina, you do this 10K. Like, were you introduced to the community to even find out about everything? Rockford's exceptional. Like, they really are a great, but you tell the story of that.
No, you hit it on the head, Michelle. Like, we didn't know, we're newer to the area. We moved here in 2015 for my job. And so we were just getting into the area and learning more things. And we ran across, Fleet Feet was doing some running things. And in that, they had a couple of coaches that were also coyotes. And so the thing I met you at with Scott and the team that was there, Scott was one of the coaches. And he was a coyote, and he's an ultra runner, and he started talking and, noticed that I really liked the trails. And Chris and I started talking to him, and a bunch of the road runners as well were also in that ultra crowd with that Triple Crown series that's in there. So there is a local ultra there. And so we just kind of started talking to them, and more that we expanded with the road runners and then the coyotes, Brian Drendel and Brad Gorski and Kelly Gorski, Jessica Mavis and the team. And they just kind of started telling us about all these races and all these things. And then Paul Shamondel and Hulanath is the joke with him is if you can do a half marathon, you can do a 25K. If you could do a 25K, what's a marathon? And if you could do, and I'm not doing this justice in his style, but if you could do a marathon, what's a 50K? It's only 6 more. And if you can do a 50K, then what's a 50 miler? It's just a bit longer. And then what's 100K on a 50? And that's Paul's progression of math. And it sounded ludicrous, and it is, but it's really true. And I joked with him the other day about that his ridiculous math equation that he would spout off to be on the trails, him and Greg Bruno. I remember a lot of those conversations where they're like, you've got the legs for going longer. You just need to just go sign up for a 50 miler. And I'm like, I haven't done a 25K yet. What are you talking about? They're like, you can do it. Trust me. I'm like, no. So I kind of held myself in check. But there was so many of the Rockford area runners that just were at it, and they'd known people, Pat Graves and the team, Terry Weinberg. They all had done it and had great experiences. And they just said, you just keep working at it and you will absolutely get there. It's nothing that anybody can't do if you want to. And so we were really fortunate with that Rockford scene with between the road runners and then the coyotes to just have everybody just saying, you can do this. And they talk through their progression of how they went about things, some much more timidly and safely, I'll say, and then some that really kind of pulled the grenade pin and went really, really big. But they just kind of walked us through how the progression was and gave us a lot of confidence that, like, well, we can get there and you can pick whatever path you want. And so it was really a great environment with all those people in the area just to expose us to the different races and the styling of it for ultra running. We were really fortunate.
Yeah, so Ethan is in the comments, and he said Rockford does have a great community of runners. And you talked at the beginning a little bit about, like always, people can relate to what you're going on. And one thing that I have noticed about the Rockford Coyotes and the Road Runners is like they have every level of runner is there showing up. And everybody feels part of it. And I actually, Crystal, by you, I think that tends to be true in a lot of the trail, groups that are out there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I have to say, I do love those Rockford runners. And I'll probably end up being out there more often now. So I definitely want to link up with Rockford.
Yeah, Rock Cut State Park's a great place to run, and I've done the Hobo series too. It was one of my first ones. So we need to make sure we add a link to that in the comments because those are great races. Are those open for this year?
They are not open yet this year. The Roadrunners have been really, really cautious with a lot of their races. The Tour de Trail series is on. That's their winter series that there's a 3, a 6, a 9, and a 12 at the local parks. But last year's got canceled for COVID and everything. This year they've been working with obviously the different protocols and everything to see about how to get some of these races back going. So right now the registration is not open, and that one usually doesn't open up till later anyway. So it's not like it's a delay. But right now, I know the board's still working on the race plan for the year based on the protocols. Because some of the races, like State Street Mile, for example, with the Roadrunners, it's I think 1,100 people. You can't, and it's in a mile, and it's on a downtown drag. There's just no way to do that, frankly, safely. That I don't think that we've discussed in those groups. And I'm not speaking for them, believe me, but I don't see a way that some of those races can be handled in the current situation with any sort of good feeling, with any sort of good controls, just because of the crowd control issue, which is, I think, what we've seen in the larger races with Boston and New York and Berlin. There's no good way to do that because of the crowd. But these smaller races, the Tour de Trail series, where you're talking about 100-ish people and in a rolling start on a trail in the woods that's all single track that doesn't cross, you're talking spacing of a runner every couple of minutes. I mean, I ran the 3 mile, and I think and I ran the course 4 times or something like that, just because Christina was volunteering and I had mileage to do. I ran the course each time. I think I came across maybe 4 or 5 runners in the entire loop on the 3 mile as we're doing a rolling start. So you're talking in that course, there's very little interaction. And so I think that's a safe environment for some of these small races. The Hobo is similar. I think it's small enough that if we can get the permitting, it could go on, but I don't know that that's being approached. We had an issue with Rock Cut being redone the 1 year. So they were reworking the park. So that pushed it to other parks, which was a whole different kind of a challenge because the parks we ran in got flooded with the bad rain. That was a good year. That was entertaining. We thought that was going to be a patty cake race, really easy because the courses were a lot gentler than a Rock Cut course. But it ended up being the different loops where you ran in your about a quarter mile each direction, and so you had a half mile where they're running in calf deep water, then it turned into knee deep water, then it turned into, depending on your height, somewhere between thigh and hip deep water. So
I remember those pictures.
Right. So a couple of the runners are like, "This is easier to swim," but it was a hoot. So we'll see if the Hobo series goes on. It's one of my favorite race series, and I think that's really that race and that style of repetitive running really was the thing that hooked me into the trail series, because it is, I think, a huge part of how I train for things and how I think a lot of the ultra runners train is just that repetitive running day after day and pushing hard on a trail is the best way to kind of get you used to being tired. And the longer distances, you're going to be tired.
So do you think when you jumped up to those longer distances, like what is the thing that you learned that was most important? I think the biggest thing that I learned from the people that were teaching me was fueling and hydration, right? If you're not eating and you're not drinking, you're going to croak. And that's pretty much it. You can turn down the speed. You can turn up the speed. You can make sure your intensity is right. You got to make sure your gear is good, but that's pretty basic. But if you're not fueling in a way that works for you, you're going to crash and burn every time. And I think that part of it was keeping the fueling consistent and knowing how you need to fuel and on what at what times with what either time or energy expenditure. That's all an N=1 population game. Like everything in this sport, it's what gear works for you doesn't work for Crystal. What works for Crystal doesn't work for Royal, right? And by doing that, the only way to learn that is to try and fail. Frankly, a lot of times, I just was out Sunday with Shane, Aaron, and Natalie and Heather at Rock Cut. Didn't intend to run with them, ran with them, and did a nice easy loop on the lake in the snow and poles. Burned up a ton of time and did not fuel properly and crashed on my second set of miles doing my back eight on the 16 or 15, I should say. And I knew I was going to crash and I knew I was doing it wrong, but I wanted to see what would happen because the expenditure level of energy was different, doing kind of that hike instead of a run. So I knew I was going to crash, but it's something you just kind of have to play with and go, I knew I was burning out, but I knew that it was going to be fine because it's Rock Cut. It's a 3 square mile park. It's not like it's unsafe. And my wife's 10 minutes up the road.
But I think some of that is being unafraid to try and to not be in that environment where you're not going to get into trouble at a race. You're not going to get into trouble on a trail run with people, but learning how to fuel properly is the biggest thing. And the only way to do it is just to get out there and try it out.
What did you find worked for you for fueling? What's your go-to?
I'm lucky. I have a rot gut by and large. I can eat darn near anything. So I find if I have too much candy or the sugary powders or things like that, my teeth will start to just absolutely kill me late in the race. I can just feel my teeth just grinding from the sugar. At late stage in a race, like 50 miles plus, my teeth just start hurting if I'm fueling on too much candy, basically. So I find I do a mixture between trail mix, gels, and some powdered fuel, more of the protein type fuels. And then I actually do jerky or meat sticks a lot of the time as well. And then my go-to for electrolytes is pickles and olives. And those just keep me steady Eddie on electrolytes, especially the summertime. I know if I keep pickles and olives about every half marathon distance, that'll straighten me right out because I sweat an absolute ton and it's a ton of salt. So for me, that electrolyte keeps me really, really solid. So
that's good. And so with COVID, I'm just curious, was T-Bunk the race that you had been planning on doing all year?
No, it wasn't. I didn't have a 100-miler planned. It kind of, I did your virtual summer where I did the Coyote 400, and that was the largest mileage I'd ever done in a month, in those 2 months. And it felt good and it felt really strong, and it was probably a little much, but it kind of got me feeling that, well, I can do the 50, I can do the 100K. I've probably got the fitness I can ride into 100, and I'll see how it goes. And I really love the feel of that style of a race. Those small hometown, almost fat ass kind of races are just that environment is really what draws me to a lot of the styling, because it's just, it's hanging out by a campfire, having a beer, eating a bunch of food and BSing with people in the area. Yeah. I'm not a huge fanfare runner, the swag, and you guys have some of the coolest swag, so don't ever think you don't. The swag is great, but it's really the feel and the environment, that kind of welcoming style that really draws me to a lot of the races. And T-Bunk was one I'd crewed at before as the race I'd first paced. I paced AJ Arnold at it, and I just loved the feel of it and being out on that course and the loops. I know I wasn't sure about the loops, but we did like I said, we did a fat ass, James Wright and we decided to do a fat ass in summer at Rock Cut of 12 hours on the hottest day in summer in 19. And that was just grueling, but it was so fun to do that. And so it kind of got me into that style of, okay, well, this is just kind of a big hangout thing. And T-Bunk was not on the plan for 20, but I figured I had the fitness after the Coyote summer to ride into it. And then I'd have enough downtime to plan for what's going to be Otter coming up here next week, that it would kind of ride in, and I wouldn't fry myself, hopefully, for Otter.
Yeah, so I'm sure we've got people listening, and even I did. I was on Frozen Otter website today, and I'm not quite sure. I don't understand why people sign up for it personally. Like, I mean, I'm sure they're fantastic, but it sounds like it looked pretty scary. But that's good.
I think part of it's the appeal, right? It's one thing just to be able to do the distance, right? Because it's just a bit over 100K, so it's not like it's not a distance that others can't do. But the weather, because it's right in the middle of January, the weather is usually awful.
It's Wisconsin.
Go ahead. Yep, the Northern Kettles. It spans the whole Northern Kettle Moraine course. So that length of segment is technically, I think it's 34.5 miles in that area. It spans, I think it spans 31 of it, because there's a little small sector off the south end that it doesn't go from H out to the county line. but it spans basically the northern kettles from Highway H to Highway P in there, and goes from Maudie north to P and then back south to Maudie, and that's a 46, and then Maudie down to H is another 9, and back is 18. So you're up at right around that 64 mark for the race. And the weather can be, they've had a couple years that were weird years that was no snow, it was all mud. They've had a couple years it was 20 below. Or less than 20 below, worse than that. Last year when I tried it we got, I think, 6 or 8 inches of fresh powder the day before. And so it was silt, and that was awful. And then it turned super cold and went down to, I think it got down to like 6 or 7 below overnight. And that's where, and James almost made it. He made it all the way down to H when he ran it last year. He made it further than I did. And that end of that course, I think we had 6 finishers last year was it, just because the between the breaking of the snow and then the snow crusted and post hold over at the back section, it was just brutal on all the runners. I think they said they were doing like 25, 30-minute miles, and and those are the only people who made it, were cranking 30-minute miles. Just awful. So, but it's a mental challenge to be able to deal with the conditions. It started off at, I think it started off at like 28, 30 degrees when we started the race at 10 in the morning, and it ended up at, I want to say 3 or 7 below, with a wind chill of, I think it was almost 10 or 11 below. So it in the span of that 24 hours, it got really, really different.
Yeah, I feel like when I've always watched it from afar. It's not been one that I thought about doing, but but I also I do like winter running. And one of the things that I like about it is once you get in the woods, I feel like it makes it feel warmer than, I don't like winter road running, but in the woods, does it have any of that to it? Or are you kind of out in the wind and it's just because I know it's or actually I don't know what the trail's like. I'm thinking it's a little wider, right?
The course varies. There's some double track section that's a little wider, say like snowmobile style, but that's not a ton of it. It's pretty varied, I'd say. And there is a road crossing section which is just absolutely brutal because you are out in the wind, and it's on, I want to say it's Highway 23, something like that. I can never remember the right road, but that section, it's only about 2 miles with the road crossing there when you're going across there, and Trainwreck and Glacier, I think, also cross that section, those races. And in the winter, that section is just brutal because it's like 35-mile-an-hour winds on that highway, and it's open. And that section, I always hate getting onto it just because it is cold. The woods do help insulate a little bit because you've got so much tree cover in there for keeping it, say, a little bit warmer, but you could also get some pretty big drifts. But most of the race, I'd say the majority of the race is single or double track, and a little bit of snowmobile in there, maybe about a third of it. And then, like I said, a very small section is that road race portion, that couple of miles that's there. But most of it's between single and double track. And typical northern kettle moraines, it's about 125 foot a mile, rolling the whole way, rocks and roots. Not exceedingly technical, not like Superior or anything like that, like those real north races with a lot of bad spree or anything. But certainly it's a little bit worse than the southern kettles where Ice Age and Kettle Moraine is. A little bit more elevation, and the footing's a little less sure up there. The snow actually helps the race in that respect because you can actually slide on it versus the rocks and the roots. So it's kind of one of those, you hope for enough snow that it's packed and you can kind of ski and run and slide on it, but not to kick through silt. If it's too low, then getting speed on that course is challenging because of the exposed roots and rocks that are on it. So it's a little different.
So, and what's the time limit for it?
24 hours.
24 hours.
So it's not for a 64 miler, so you're talking 3 miles an hour. It's not awful, but you're carrying gear with you as well. That's mandatory. So it's not the easiest in that respect.
Well, I feel like when I watch it on Facebook and everybody that's going out there, that it's a really high DNF rate. Like everybody shows up knowing they'll
Mhm.
try. I'll try my best, but a lot of people don't make it.
Yeah, I was just looking earlier. I think it's something like 175 people have completed it, and there's like 42 of them that have done it more than once, and some of those are multiple repeats. So there's not a lot of finishers that have done the whole race, the full distance. You can still get a completion, but not be a frozen few by doing a partial. You have to go a certain distance out and back to get to claim it. But if you don't make it back under your own power under one of those distance points, you get DNF. That's what I did last year. I canned out at Greenbush. So
I imagine, like, because I know you like to plan, and so the strategy of how you're going to manage it probably is really intriguing.
yeah, I do, and it is because that race with the terrain can be so different because of the weather, and then you're having to for the race. I personally train with the heaviest gear. I train with all the extreme weather gear. So my pack as a whole is about 20 pounds when I'm training all the time, with the water and the extreme gear and extra clothes. And I deliberately try to push it to the heavier end, which just to make it harder, which if you've not run with a pack, that makes, once you get done with the pack, boy, your legs feel a heck of a lot easier. But train heavy, and then if you go out and you're going to go light, you also, because there's only one drop box and it's at 46, so you have to go out 23 and back 23. There's no aid. There's no support. You can't be crewed. You can be paced, but you can't be muled in any fashion. And there's aid along the way, but it's pretty minimal fanfare in that respect. You get ramen and cocoa and water, and maybe some snacks, but it's not guaranteed on the race. So you're basically huffing most of the race on that first half of that first 46 on mostly your own fuel and then some assisted water. And doing that and then planning for being hot enough or cold enough with the right gear, but not too much weight. It's challenging to kind of find that line of how to do it. I know all the racers in Otter have said, the biggest thing is figuring out a speed that you can go where you don't sweat. I don't have that speed. There's way too much fur on this. I'm either freezing to death and I'm not moving, or I'm moving and even at a hike, I'm going to sweat. So for me, it's managing that moisture with the right gear. For me, it tends to be wool layers, socks, thermal underwear, stuff like that, or tech gear, and dealing with that. And that's challenging because as it moves and as you do so through the thermal aspect of the race becomes challenging. And that's kind of what threw me, because I've got Raynaud's syndrome. It threw me last year. I wasn't sure how to deal with it, but I couldn't feel my hands for say 30 minutes before I got to Greenbush. And then I sat at Greenbush trying to warm my hands up for 20 minutes and couldn't feel them. And I was just afraid I was going to get frostbite and not know it by having numb hands. So I pulled the plug. And so that's kind of where this year's training was a little different, but it took me to places training that are not generally suggested. Doing runs of 7+ hours, 7 to 10 hour training runs is generally not considered healthy just because of how hard it is on the body. But to get to a thermal temperature in the winter that your body is set up, at least for me, I needed to be out there 6.5+ hours to get basically thermally saturated to figure out what to do. And again, that mental side of that racing and figuring out how to deal with that and manage fueling and manage your temperature and manage your gear without falling apart or turning into an icicle is fun, for me at least.
Yeah, I can't imagine 46 miles, like you're in snow, you're carrying your pack, and it seems like it's more, I think I've only heard of one warmer weather year, and it sounds like that was pretty hard, but it's usually pretty cold there. Like, what are you eating? So you got how do you decide what goes in there? Are you like cooking? Like you mentioned ramen. Are you stopping along the side and cooking stuff, or just are you doing the goos?
There's aid at the race. There's typically aid about every 6 or 7 miles. This year is going to be a little bit different, but there's aid about 6 or 7 miles that'll have the water, the cocoa, and the ramen through the course. So there's those stations that you can fuel up there. But I mean, the trouble is stopping is, for me at least, dangerous. And for a lot of people, it's dangerous because you lose so much of that body heat. As soon as you stop, your body, or at least a lot of runners, and mine included, my body starts switching over saying, oh, I'm done exercising. Let me start prioritizing other things. So stopping there to refuel for a long period of time, just like a speed race, like some of the faster racers would do, you don't want to burn time at an aid station fueling. So getting there, getting your water, and maybe getting some ramen and then booking out tends to be important. And then the rest you're just carrying with you. So you're carrying stuff that can't freeze. So stuff that certain candies, gummies, even gels turn into basically fudge or super molasses. So there's certain gels that do better than others in that temperature. Keeping them close to your body is obviously important to keep them warm. A lot of people use candy that basically just doesn't freeze well. So I think Reese's Pieces, or not Reese's Pieces, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, I think is something a lot of people will use because they don't freeze. But like I use candy corn, and candy corn gets hard as a rock if it's exposed to the elements, of course. So you got to keep it close to your body. And then similar thing with the electronics, you got to keep your electronics warm. So depending on the type of fuel you're going to have, the powders or the gels, any of that stuff can get really hard to digest or break into. I think like stroopwafels basically turn into a brick and you can snap your tooth on one. So it's a lot of playing around with what works really, because I personally, I haven't trained to do any of the ketogenic stuff to not fuel. But I'm pretty good with fueling and keeping fuel on the go, but some people have been able to do it with a lot less fueling and just, riding in on gels. Myself personally, I have to keep my calories up and moving the whole time, or it'll catch up to me and burn out, and I'll just start turning my lights down. I'll just start getting tired. So and playing with that with caffeine and things like that too late in the race, because it's winter, right? At that time of the year, that race, it's light from 7 a.m. till 4 p.m. basically. So you don't have a lot of time in the daylight because the race typically starts at 10 a.m. So you've got from 10 till 4 in the light, and then the rest of the race is in the dark. So playing with lighting and staying out is a little entertaining.
Yeah, Marvin Atkins is asking how you keep your hydration from freezing.
Personally, I use double stainless insulated bottles. So I've got a pack that I have that has two front vest pouches in the front that'll take a 750 milliliter bottle. So I carry a 1.5 liters in two stainless double wall flasks. Some people have done bladders, and this is always a hotly contested thing. I've tried it. You can get away with doing bladders. Some people have found ways to do that by keeping it in an insulated sleeve or an insulated tube, and then keeping it under your layers. Personally, I keep my pack on the outermost section, so that does not work for me. The other way is for winter racing, especially stuff out in the cold. You can cut your water with vodka, and I've done that before for winter ultras and winter running, if needed. But in this race, the double stainless stuff, I can usually keep those from freezing out there, even in bad temperatures, even on, say, tap water out of your fridge, which is colder. That stuff won't start freezing on me in 10-degree weather until maybe 3 hours out on the good stainless bottles. And if you preheat the water and preheat the bottle, that'll get you even more life. So there's ways to basically saturate it longer. And obviously at the aid stations, with them having hot water, you can have them put in half hot, half cold, whatever, but it'll certainly last you 7 or 8 miles, no trouble. I don't think too many of the racers end up fueling with vodka cutting their water. But it's certainly a technique that I picked up from one of our local racers here that I was having trouble. And she told me, yeah, well, he's like, how much vodka are you running in there? I'm like, what do you mean vodka? I'm like, she's like, well, of course it's going to freeze. It's 4 degrees out here. Everything's going to freeze. So she told me, anywhere from a tablespoon to 3 tablespoons of vodka per liter. And sure as heck, it cuts the content enough and keeps it moving. So it helps to do it. But that obviously isn't good for some people. And Not everybody wants to do that, but it's not really noticeable from a taste or obviously a performance perspective, because you're burning through those calories so quickly. The alcohol doesn't have a chance to affect you any. I personally don't think.
Yeah, I was curious about the taste because, like, I'm not really a drinker unless it's margaritas. We know, and I don't think margaritas are gonna go into my backpack.
Well, I know a few racers who've done that in their hydration packs, actually, for some races.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, my first ultra was Howl at the Moon, and they actually had margaritas at the aid station. So I guess that I was like, I guess I'm an ultra runner now. But yeah, like we should do a taste test here at the trailhead. Like put the so 1 tablespoon of water or 1 table. No, we're gonna and then the rest vodka.
Well,
is that right?
How far? Well, if you want to drink a liter of vodka, go ahead. I don't think I can do that.
So everybody listening, raise their hand if they want to be part of that that training. No, that's interesting because I get really picky about my water, and like even good water, I'm like, it starts tasting bad later on in the race. Like I'll tell my husband, I'm like, that's not our good water. I need my good water. He's like, that's the same water you've been drinking all day. I'm like, well, now it doesn't taste good. Maybe if it had vodka in it, it would.
There you go. Yep.
Well, the water will take on the flavor of the vessels that it's sitting in. I find the same thing if it's sitting in some of our, our plastic containers for a long period of time. It does start to get off in its flavor and things like that. Or similar, if it sits in the stainless flasks for a period of time, even though they're stainless, it will pick up certain flavors from what's in the water, even if it's filtered water after a period of time. So, but again, if you're out there and you're consuming it during that period of time, I found the vodka, especially if you're not using terrible rot gut vodka, like Tito's is good and it's cheap. Just Tito's, I like Tito's. I drink it regularly for my own sake, and then for cutting, it's good as well. You don't need to use Mohawk or something. Like you don't need to go to the bottom shelf Osco or something like that to cut something, because you're gonna taste that. But a decent vodka, it should be clean. It should have very little flavor to it in that respect. And in a tablespoon in a liter is such a small quantity, it's going to dilute. And you can obviously mix it with Tailwind or Roctane or whatever other powder you want, and it's just in there as well. The electrolytes will alter the composition slightly to give you a little bit of temperature, but not significantly enough to buy you really any time, I don't think, in the cold. And there's some studies out there on what those electrolytes do to the concentrations, because again, it's a little bit of salt and water, so to speak, for the electrolytes versus the vodka. And the vodka doesn't cut the temperature down a lot either, but it's something the military had used. And there's a bunch of templates on how much you can cut in, but I think that 1 to 3 tablespoon is in a liter is a fairly decent ratio to get you a bit of time out there in cold temperatures. And again, a good bottle is the big thing. You don't want to be running a plastic bottle or a standard single wall bottle if you don't have to. But if you're going to run a bladder, keep it insulated, keep it in your pack, keep it under your layers, and it'll survive. The tube is where you're going to have the trouble, because the exposure on the tube and blowing back into the tube helps. But even then, again, it's exposure. It's a single wall piece of plastic, basically. Those tend to have a lot of trouble, I think. So. But
there is some people that use it, so they've found a way.
They do. They get away with it. Yeah. They get away with the insulation, and then again, keeping it basically nested, I think, is one of the bigger keys there. And for me, with the way I run, I don't want to be under a coat in that way, so it just didn't work for me. So I went with the big double stainless.
Yeah, that sounds good. And plus, I really like drinking out of a container. Like drinking those straws, like I just don't really like drinking out of those. I prefer drinking out of a cup or a water bottle. So yeah, that sounds good. I'm curious, like you talked about your hands, and that was a problem. That's what's caused you to stop last time. What are you doing different this time?
This time I've got a different set of gloves I'm trying. And then I've been, again, the exposure training. I wasn't sure before. I did a couple of things. So I've got a different set of gloves. I've got silk liners, and then I've got boiled wool mittens, which again, some of my wonderful coyote friends, as well as some of the otters, had suggested. They suggested the boiled wool mittens because that's basically a felted or a boiled wool. It's a lot more dense. It still breathes, but it keeps things really warm. And then the silk, I've run silk liners before, and silk's a good thermal regulator for me in general. So that combination, and then running with heater pads on occasion, and then just recognizing that if I am having issues, how to deal with some of the thermal problems of it, of kind of anticipating if my hands start to go, I have to kind of be ahead of it. If I start to feel things moving, it's better while I still have feeling to say add hot packs and have my hands be overly warm and put the packs in there to prevent it or to help slow the nerve spasming from my nods. And then running with poles, I found because you're working your arms so much, that pushes more blood flow into the grip. And especially with poles, in mittens, because I have to run in mittens, really. I can't run in gloves. My hands will not survive that. But in mittens, because you're doing that grip, you've just got that thumb on those hands, that gripping and moving motion puts so much more blood flow back into the forearms and the fingers. I can kind of get my pulse back or get my feeling back after a few miles there. And that was just, again, something I had to figure out on my own with my training to see if I could recover really, and how to recover and how to plan for it. But it was a bit challenging after last year and discouraging to say, okay, well, I like this race, but I don't honestly know if I'm going to be able to do it. And I still don't know, and that's fine, but I'm going to keep giving it a whirl and trying to up the ante to figure out how to deal with it and see if I can. But I think I've got a good plan this year to deal with my hands and hopefully make it.
Yeah, I hope so too. Is there anything else that you took from last year that you're going to use towards this year?
From last year, this year. No, I think that was the biggest thing. I mean, the course, I knew what the course was going to be like. I knew what the food and everything was going to be like. My pack and my gear was good. The training, I think going with the stainless and playing with that more has been, I was running that a bit before last year. And now I think the main thing was just the temperature problems. I will say the one thing I did learn last year, but I'm not going to do this year, is I got out near running in the front of the pack for a while in that heavy snow. And I'm not an elite runner, and I'm not going to try to be or pretend to be. But I got out early in that pack and following a couple of people. I think I got up to third for a while, and just busting through that 6 to 8 inch snow was just such an energy suck. And it was not worth it. It didn't cause me the issues I had, but it was just not worth the energy it took to break that trail. Like I will gladly hang in the back for a while and get 10 or 12 pole positions back to let somebody else bust that snow up. Because it was just busting through the silt was just, it sucks a ton of energy out of you. And for me, I'm not going to grind it that hard. I have no desire to try to burn that out that way. But that was the only other thing is, it's kind of a pick your battle kind of a thing. There was no point in being up that far and trying to break that much trail. I had no need to be up that high. So
that sounds like a blast, though. Like 6 to 8, like just flying through. One of my all-time favorite runs I can remember was actually through like 6 to 8 inches of fresh snow, where I was I was absolutely exhausted when I was done because it was so much work going through. But man, that is fun.
It can be. Usually the Tour de Trail 6 miler here, for whatever reason, that race always falls. We've always got like 6 inches of fresh powder for that race. And it's actually the same. It's next weekend or it's the same weekend as Otter is, so I can't do it. But that race is always a killer because of that. And I love it because that light snow on a 6 mile course, I've got enough juice that I can run through it and bound and kick and push it. But it is a lot of energy to do basically high knees for 6 miles.
But what a treat to get to do that, because you never
Mhm.
know if you're going to have snow. But that is like any chance that any runner has. If you can break trail, like that is something that everybody needs to do.
Yeah, and again, knowing how much it does take out of you and planning for it and not going out too hard. And again, it's a good thing to learn. I think for runners, it's a good prep for sand, because sand and light snow are the same. They're silt. They're awful from an energy perspective. But if you've got weak core and weak hips, and things like that, you run through deep snow or sand that's soft like that, you're going to feel it bad. It's going to kill you, right? You're just going to burn up and feel all sorts of aches and pains in all your hip muscles if you're not well balanced and trained there. Like it's a good way to figure out something, because you don't need to high knee anywhere else. Even mountain races, yeah, you're stepping high and you're pushing hard, but that's not the same kind of muscles as you're going to swing for silt kicking and sand kicking. It's a different set of, a lot more stabilizers, I think, in that soft stuff. But again, you're absolutely right, Michelle. I think it's a great experience to try to go out and hammer in light snow and see what you do and see how it is to run it, because it will make you a good runner.
But if you hang back at this race, let the lead people, they'll pack it down for you, and you're gonna lay back this time.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow the chariots. That's right.
So you talked about your core and stuff. It can really get to you. Did you do core work to get ready for this race?
I wish I could say I did, but no. Body by something, I don't know. I lift, but primarily arms and legs and my back. I've got scoliosis in my back, so I try to keep on that with stretching and yoga a bit here and there. But my core, I neglect my core a bit, but I think in good or bad, my core has to deal with my form issues. So it's decently strong as it is, just because of my back. So it kind of compensates for my bad back and in ways. So it's pretty tough. But more hip stuff and things like that, with just general, a lot of hip flexor work, because again, that snow kicking and that pole work that's potentially needed, just being strong on your feet on unstable terrain, more so for me.
And the race, is it next weekend? Or
it's the 16th, the following weekend. So not this coming, but the following.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm already on the 9th. Yeah. So, okay, well, good luck on that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Do you feel ready?
Ready as I'm going to be.
There you go.
And are you on taper, or what kind of mileage are you doing this week? So 2 weeks out.
I think this week I'd have to check. I want to say I'm probably something like, I don't know, probably somewhere in the mid 30s. I don't do a lot of mileage by comparison. In general, I don't tend to have enough time to get some of the bigger mileage numbers. Like that week, those couple of months with you, like I said, that 100K thing in 10 days or whatever, that was, I think, the highest mileage I'd run in a week ever. Usually my mileage on the high side of training is anywhere from 50 to 70, and I barely break 70 a week. Most of the time, I'm usually in the 40 to 50 range most of the time for stuff. In the lighter weeks, I'm in the 30s. So that just tends to be where I'm riding. I don't necessarily put enough effort or emphasis into it, I guess, to get the mileage volume up, but it's working for me, and I can manage it with my schedule. So this week will probably be somewhere in the 30s. I think I got a couple of 12s on the weekend or something like that as my last doubles.
Well, consistency is most important.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you write your schedule?
I did. I write mine, and Chris writes ours old school on the fridge. We've got this calendar for me and her and the dog all in one for every month.
Aww.
So the dog's on a training, like the dog gets to run some of it. What kind of mileage is the dog doing?
Well, Edgar's almost 11 now, so he can do 2 to 3 miles at my pace on the roads or the trails, and maybe maybe on a day, and then maybe on a hike he can do about 6 or 8 if it's not too bad of a terrain. He's getting older. He's getting into, I want to say he's about 9 miles a week. We get him out for about 3 runs lately, and that seems to be good for him with his joints. He's a big dog and has arthritis, but he still wants to get out. He started running when I did, so like the training plan for me and the dog was like a couch to 5K or couch to 10K that Chris got us on, and he took off when I did. So he started running late in life as well. He only started when he was 7. So he came in late at it, and he's a big dog. So, but he gets his mileage in there, and we get him out. He has fun.
Well, way to go, Edgar.
Nice.
So, is there other coyotes heading out to the Frozen Adder?
Yeah, I think Mavis Jessica's coming out. Bruno's coming out. I want to say who else is out there. I just saw a couple of them. Janelle and Terry are coming out, and I'm going to butcher a few more because I think there's like 10 of us.
Yeah, nothing like putting you on the spot. Come on, write in the comments. Tell us who's all going to be there.
I think I got a few. I knew at least those folks. I think there's a couple more. I think Carrie, but I don't know her well. And there's a few more. Like I said, I think there's like 10 of us that are going. I know I'm missing a few, but I think there's like 10 of the coyotes locally that are going. So it's a pretty good group.
Oh, that sounds fun. I can't wait to watch from the trailhead here.
Yeah.
What about you, Crystal? Not your thing? Hey, can you go volunteer? No. I'd like to go volunteer there.
Yeah, Rodrigo and Karen would love it. There's always need. The big thing with volunteering there is it's colder, obviously, because you're not moving, but you do get to tend fire. Becky and Erica Leahy are actually going to volunteer another couple coyotes. They're coming out to volunteer for us, and they get to tend the fire and look after stuff. But those are bastions of light as well as the sirens of death, right? Because the fire is one of the things that kills people in the race. Yep. Oh, but it's warm and cozy and there's food here. You're right. So you can be a temptress if you want, Crystal. You can be the siren song.
Get away from the fire. It's mine.
There you go. But yeah, no, there's still need for volunteers with Rodrigo and Karen. It's always obviously in that race, it's tough because the shifts and how long the race is, and then being out in the cold, it's a tougher race to volunteer at. It ain't no picnic, but we love the volunteers with it because they are a lifeline, especially in the cold out there in the dark. And even if it's not in the dark, it's just, you get so spread out on that course after the first, say, 8 to 10 miles, it gets pretty spread out, going into those aid stations. And it's one thing to be on an aid station on a course and, they're always positive and you're always happy, but after being out in the woods and it's quiet and it's cold and there's nothing there, and then coming into a place of life and energy, it's a really, it really is a lifeline and a bastion out there. So you want to see happy people coming into an aid station. Otter's got some really happy runners that are just super, super appreciative of the volunteers freezing their tails off worse than we are because they're standing there trying to stay warm, not moving much, right? So it's a wonderful job for the volunteers. We really appreciate them.
Oh yeah, for sure. Volunteers are the best.
So there's a Frozen Otter training page, so that's probably where you could go learn more or volunteer possibly. Or do you know how to volunteer?
FatOtter.com that's the website for Fat Otter Sports. And they've got the links on there for signing up. And then the Facebook group has the links for the volunteer sign up page as well. But it's right off the main page as well for volunteering. So all that info's there.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. It's really not that bad. I mean, at the Frozen Gnome, I stand outside for at least 15 hours.
Oh yeah, we're out there all day.
I got a really nice, really long North Face, puffy jacket. And after I learned how to dress to stand outside, I'm totally fine out there. And with a fire, we don't have a fire at our finish line. it's a park
Mm-mm.
district, but that sounds like a great weekend, especially with Becky and Erica there.
Oh, I love Becky and Erica.
Yeah. So it's a good time, and the stations are at accessible points for the vehicles, obviously, but they are still off trail. I know Veterans Acres, where you guys are, that can be a blustery little spot.
It is.
In general, the aid,
Yep.
most of the aid stations aren't as exposed at Otter, luckily. So they're most of them are decently tucked in. There's a couple that can get exposed, but they're usually pretty good. And they've got tenting and stuff like that but they've got nice big fires. And so yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Well, we got the. Is there anything else from that? Because we want to get to the Ornery Mule Stubborn 5, but is there anything else that you wanted to share about that race?
Otter? No, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It's a great crew. It's very much you've got to have the right styling, if you will, mentally to try to go after that race. But it is that cold winter race ultra runners in general, the trail ultra group is a wonderful, quirky, close knit sort of family. And the ultra cold people are even more off in the woods, if you will, mentally, I think in a lot of ways. But they're super, super giving and helpful, and they're always really, really out there to help with you. Because I mean, you're to kind of commit that time. It does take a different kind of mentality to suffer like that, and that's where the for the love of misery is their slogan. It is truly for the love of that misery that you put yourself out, because why would you want to be out for 24 hours in that kind of weather, right? No, it's a great race, and Rodrigo and Karen do a great job with it, and all the people that come out for it. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope to be able to finish and be a frozen few, but if not, oh well, and I'll still support the race and come out, because it's such a good group of people, like so many of the other races here. Supporting them is important. So
yeah, that sounds fun. I'm not gonna run it. I know I'm not gonna run it. So I'm not. It actually does sound fun, but I don't think I can do it, quite honestly. The cold would bother me. But volunteering.
Now here's one thing most people don't realize. At this race, because of the safety factor with it, you can have a pacer at any time during the entire race. So if you just want to come out and do some miles and help someone while away some time and get some miles in out there and see part of that course, come out to one of the stations and do a point to point, or do an out and back with some people and spend some time with some racers, right? And you can, do something like that. So if you want to do the darkest and the worst section, from Mavi to H, that's the worst part of the night, when it's the darkest and the suckiest, you will have some racers that would probably love to have you out there.
That's really
if you
fun.
offered it up.
And at night, I bet you that's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it is stunning. And that part of the trail is actually really, really pretty. It's so pretty. It's a shame to do it in the dark, actually, but it is still really pretty in the dark, because you go by a couple of small inlet lakes and stuff like that are out there. But yeah, you can have a pacer that whole place. So if it's something that you wanted to come out and say, hey, I need some miles and I'm going to be there, I want to crank out X many miles, what would be a good place for me to go out and run with some of the runners? The course is open to do that, as long as you don't provide assistance to the runner, right? You can't mule, you can't hand them, you can't feed them, none of that stuff. But you could go out and pace and have some very happy people and get some exposure on that course, which is a really neat section of the Kettles to be on, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great way. Also, if somebody's interested in running the race next year, it'll give them a little insight. You'll help them get ready, mentally prepare what it would be like.
Yeah, footing wise, the worst section, if somebody, because that comes up, is what's the worst section to run. I think generally the worst section is the north end section of it, from P back down to Gray Bush. That area is probably the worst technical footing. It's not that the elevation's worse, but it's mostly single track, and there's some work. That's probably the most technical footing of the course set, I think, is what everybody's kind of generally agreed to as a whole. So if you wanted to work on kind of the roughest spot of the course is that north end. And then obviously if you want to do mental games in the dark, or if you want to come out and pick people's brains on the gear that they run in the death of winter in the middle of the night. And that's not a common subset for running, to say who's got what lights and who's got what gear for what temperature. It's not a bad way to go out and pick some people's brains,
Yeah.
you know, and they're usually not, and they're not usually hauling tail by the time you're at the end of the race. And you're not talking people, you know, cranking out 7-minute miles in the snow.
Yeah. Yeah, ultra running is a great equalizer. Like anybody, almost anybody can pace somebody. Like at the end of 100.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's good. You want to do the Ornery Mule Stubborn 5?
Cool.
You ready?
I will. Yeah, I'm ready. I was just writing a different question down. So it's a repeat question. I just like to throw it in sometimes. All right. Question 1 is, share one thing about you that people may not know.
Let's see here. One thing about me that people may not know. I was just on with Scotty in the 10 Jack Miles crew, so I'm going to steal that answer and say I never had a soft spot as a baby. So hard-headed, medically hard-headed. Could not be extracted in the normal way.
Wow.
That's awesome. Okay, question 2 is, did you hallucinate during T-Bung?
No, I did not. Not at all. I lost my light at about mile 76, 77, somewhere in that neighborhood. I had 4 miles left in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., but no hallucinations. I took a couple of trail naps, but no hallucinations.
Okay. That's okay. If you ever have one, we need to know about it. We like the hallucinations. All right. Do you have any other hobbies besides running?
Ones that I'm consistent with, not particularly. I mess around with my cars and 4x4, and I've got a motorcycle, and I like to fish and hunt. But mostly outdoor stuff, things like that. But running's probably the most consistent one.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Do you
a lot
have
of traveling?
Oh yeah, lots of traveling. Have you been traveling because of COVID, or have you been at home a lot more?
No, lockdown, unfortunately. But
well,
a lot of local
hopefully
trips. We did some camping. That was about it this past year.
Yeah. All right. Do you have someone you look up to in your life?
I always forget about that one. Darn it. You know, I'd say a lot of the local runners I look up to, especially the oldest ones actually in the group. I kind of really look up to James and Rhonda and some of the road runners that are out there and Terry and Pat. I mean, I'm just trying to think. There's so many in that group, but those are the kind of the 4 that come to my mind. They've just got such a great attitude of the sport and engaging it at whatever level you can, and that's kind of where I want to be. I want to be still cranking out an ultra when I'm 80, dragging my ass up and down things at whatever speed I can, right? And that joy of life and that joy of being in that community is something that I really look up to in them, and that they help instill in others. So I think from the sport, that's something with those people I really tend to look up to, and they're wonderful people to get to spend time with.
Awesome. Yeah, that is a good group up there. I need to go up there and run with you guys more.
Just let us know.
Okay. My daughter's dad lives in Cherry Valley, so I go up there quite a bit. So I'll have to pay more attention to when you guys are running, and I'll make a plan. You
don't even need to pay attention to when we're running. Just put something out on the page for the Coyotes, and you'll get someone. I guaranteed.
Awesome.
There's always somebody running. Natalie just did that. She made a challenge for some opt outside thing, and she's such a sweetheart that she made a little prize for us to do all the Winnebago County Forest Preserves. There was 43, now there's 44. But there's 44 county preserves in the area. That's not including Rock Cut or the city park. So there's 44 county preserves in Winnebago that you could go and check out. And I want to say about 30 of them were runnable. Okay. It's a lot of preserves out here. There's just a ton of options for running in this area that you can go at. And so any one of those parks, there's people all over that. Just let us know and somebody will go out and run with you.
Awesome. All right. I'm looking forward to that. All right. Last question is, what is your favorite treat for a job well done?
Favorite treat for a job well done. I'm going to go with my favorite food. So barbecue beef ribs, which I very rarely have.
Nice.
Do you make them yourself?
I do, especially now that my wife's vegan now. So mostly vegan, I should say. But barbecue beef ribs, Southwest thing from being out in California. They don't have them in the Midwest, really.
Okay.
So,
well, very good.
Generally,
that sounds good.
Yeah, they are, and then less hard to come by a good beer. So.
Yep.
And favorite beer?
Ooh, probably Bourbon County by Goose Island.
Okay.
Dark and heavy. That's the style.
Well, good. Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you. That was fun. Thanks for being on, Greg. We really appreciate you coming on, and thanks for thinking about it. Didn't I ask you in November when I saw you at the Veterans 5K if you were going to be on? And you said, I'm not sure.
I did. Like you said, you guys are going to be hard, because most everybody just says, oh, sure, it's you guys. I love you to death. I'll do whatever. And I was like, I don't know if I want to be on.
Well,
but no, you guys.
We're glad that you said yes.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully this was entertaining for at least some people. So
I think you absolutely will inspire somebody. I learned a lot. It was fantastic for me. So
yeah, for sure.
Was really good.
Yep.
Man, I've got to say, James and I, like I said, we did that one fat ass, and then him and I did we co-RD'd our first official race when we did that butt race, the bald unyielding Twilight Trail this past year. And that, I got to say, it's not easy putting on a race. I know you guys hear that a lot, but it was interesting to have to get that organized. And like I said, I'm lucky to have my wife, who's better at planning than I am, to help me. And she came out for it. But running races, you guys, I volunteered and done stuff, but like setting everything up to organize, I really look up to you guys for being able to consistently get the venues and the permits and the planning and the gear, and like there's so much that you guys do, and we appreciate it as runners for you guys. And point at Michelle.
It's all Michelle. I don't do anything. I just show up, and sometimes I wear the squirrel costume, and I'm mostly just there hanging out.
Got it. So no, it was neat to do, and I learned a lot from it, and I think it gave me a better perspective, similar to like what you guys have with volunteering. It gives you a different perspective supporting a race in that level of fashion, or running a race. And it really made me think more of how I can do things for the community and be a different participant and a different supporter of the sport in different ways. So if for nothing else, hopefully some people, don't worry about trying to lend as much of yourself as you can. If an RD asks for help, give them a whirl, right? So I did a little bit more veterans. I was on the board there, and I learned a lot about how a board works, because I wasn't on a board before. But getting involved in the community a little bit at a time, dipping my toe in that 10% rule, right?
Yep.
Thank you for putting on a race. It is not as glamorous as people think. It's not all thank you RD stuff. It's a lot. Crystal knows. I couldn't do it without Crystal and the support of people like that. And but it's a labor of love. You have to have a passion for the community. You have to, it comes from like you loving something and wanting everybody else to get to enjoy it. and that makes it
Yeah.
all worthwhile.
Yeah, and I think you guys with Ornery Mule, you guys do such a good job of just putting out that vibe of what you are and the love of the community and the sport and taking care of the trails and the people and not being pretentious, but just having something for everybody. And you guys do a good job of it. And that's why I really do appreciate you guys so much and what you represent with the crew. It's really helped me kind of see maybe it's a rosy image of the sport because I'm fairly ignorant of a lot of the pros and all that. And I don't follow any of this stuff honestly at all. But I'm happy with my own little bubble with a couple of the race directors that I know and the races I've run and participated and volunteered. It's like, oh, okay, I like this little bubble, right? I'm happy with it. I like my little community that I involve with and the energy that's there. And I'll keep going back to RDs like you and Scott and Josh Sun and supporting you guys because you guys do cool things and are just kind of the right people that at least I feel happy and good around because you're just such good people. And I appreciate that so much of you guys.
Oh, well, thank you. I think that in general, the trail community is very nice. Like, and you mentioned the elites. Like I go to a lot of, I was a rep, as you know, like Tailwind and Squirrel's Nut Butter. And a lot of the elites would come to these big shows they have, and they're just like very excited about the sport and nice. And you don't get the same thing in road running. Like they're like, yeah, you should come do that race. And then you can talk to me beforehand. I mean, it's a really nice, it's probably going to change some, but it's really nice. I like to use the hashtag grow the sport, hashtag keep it kind, because I think that's really important because it is growing. And so we have to make a very conscious decision to keep it kind.
Yeah, and I mean, I got to meet the only elite I've really gotten to meet and talk to at all was Camille at your race at Hennepin the other year, and she is just such an adorable, wonderful goofball who's just like she's just the coolest, sweetest gal, right? Like she's just so out there and approachable and just happy, right? And it's like, okay, she's this wonderful model for the sport of like this is what it can and should be, right? In a lot of ways, and I think she's a good epitome of that sort of thing. But it's like, like you said, a lot of the other sports, running or non-running related, they don't have ambassadors like that. And I think that's one thing, like you said, keeping it kind and keeping those ambassadors out there, and that's the kind of thing that's inclusive and engaging for people. I think to me, that's exactly why I like the sport. And if it does turn or certain events turn to be more snooty, I guess, definitely not my cup of tea. But the events where the good people doing good things and to enjoy being in the health you can have to be out punishing yourself for hours, right? With fun people of like mind, why not?
Yep.
I love it. Let's see. Well, I guess our next thing would be the Strava. I want to give a shout out for Strava. So did you do this, Greg? So we had a Strava challenge with the Trail Gangsters. Are you on the Ornery Mule Strava page? Oh, you need to join it.
I don't think I am.
Okay.
I don't know. I use my Garmin mostly. I joined Strava because I don't know, you or somebody or one of the folks said it. I joined it, but I don't mess with it much.
Well, we have an Ornery Mule Strava page, and so the Trail
All right.
Gangsters are in Arizona, so they're in Flagstaff. And so we had a challenge, a vert challenge with them. So they're in Flagstaff, Arizona, and we're here in the Midwest, and we beat them. We had more verts.
Oh,
so that is
nice.
Shocking. Like I am shocked. Flagstaff.
Well,
come on.
No, well, now to be fair, right? You got to think the Midwest. While we don't have big mountains, we do have a lot of rolling stuff, and you have some people that will just punish themselves by doing the Sisyphus game of pushing the stone up the hill kind of a game, right? Kaylin, who's a local runner, she made her own race thing. And one of her challenges she had was the most vertical distance in a category. And I hate a treadmill, and I set my treadmill at 10% for a half marathon and ran a half marathon on a 10% treadmill to get the most vert for this silly little challenge that we were all doing, right? So if you do something like that, there's enough people who will find a way to just go up just for the sake of it, right? And it doesn't matter what terrain you have, you'll figure it out if there's people motivated. I think in the Midwest, it may not be it may not be the most pleasant, but they'll do it out here. I think there's enough runners here that, again, with the weather we have, you got to do something to make it entertaining.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I was proud of that. So I'm surprised and Rory's like, where are they finding all this vert? Like, so good job.
Well, right. Well, yeah. Well, I was gonna say, isn't Potawatomi one of the worst vert courses out there as far as footage per mile?
It could be. It's that's a pretty rough course. It's got one rope hill, and it's just constant rollers.
Yeah. Right. I think footage wise, I thought it was like 220 or something like that. That's pretty vicious, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think around here is like we had some guys that came out to our run one time they're from Utah, and they said they were driving up and they're like, it looks pretty hilly here. They're like, I bet these guys run the entire time. Like, what do we do? We're not used to running because they're going up. So they were kind of scared. And you start getting a lot with all that just constant, up and down.
Well, yeah, you got with Frozen Gnome and then your Earth Day race. Those are both Earth Day's like 135 foot a mile, and then Frozen Gnome's 145 foot a mile or something like that. And that's as bad as Mines of Spain is at Dubuque with 145 foot a mile. I mean, it's more than the Kettles. It's more than Kettle Moraine at 110. But it's not cakewalk by any means. It's obviously not blacktop glass like Tunnel Hill and Hennepin, but it's not nothing. And I mean, like I said, I think Pot's over 200. So there's a couple of courses here that are just deliberately brutal. You just get by a river and just go up and down the dang hills, and it just, that's all you do. And you can get a lot of vert. It's not a big, Colorado climb of 6,000 feet or something like that. But you just keep pushing up and down the hill, and it'll just keep wearing you out. Like you said, we just run it because that's our course.
Yeah,
right?
It's not that long.
Rock cut.
You get to the top, and then you get a rest on the way down. Then you get to the top, and you rest on the way down.
Yeah, and rock cut varies from 70 to 110 foot a mile on average. So depending on where you run in there's some flat spots, and then there's some hillier spots. But as a whole, I think rock cut's probably in that 80 to 90 foot a mile kind of footage. And so it's definitely not flat by any means, but it's also not terrible. So we've got some good running out here in the Midwest, despite everybody joking about it being pancake flat in certain areas.
Yeah.
And Chicago is, but we've got some good hills. You just gotta go look for a river basically, and go to a natural gorge next to it.
Yep.
Right.
And then I also wanted to give a shout out to Ann Williams-Laura. So she sent us some red vines, and Crystal Little Row ate the rest of them. They're not here. So.
That's okay. I'll forgive him. As long as he shows his hand in the screen, all will be forgiven.
He's shaking his head. So
Just,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Laro's never been on, like he's really here. He's really right over there, but he has never been on camera. Like, even if he has to leave and fix a light on this side and he's on that side, he will walk through the other room and come around so that. So one day.
It's funny considering Little Ro's a performer too. I guess it's a different kind of a stage, right?
We just need him dancing back here. And then
Yeah, there you go. We need to do an outro with Lil Road dancing in the background to a wonderful ballet. I think we could do that.
That would be so amazing.
And he's probably throwing like dagger eyes at me on the screen that I can't
Right.
see.
Yeah, your screen just blacked out, I think.
oh, sorry. Audio's going out. Sorry, Lil Ro. I'm full of bad ideas.
Yeah, I think that he likes work. You know, the dance community is probably like the trail community is. It's them all working together. Like that's what I saw him as a kid. Is that so he like being on stage is just working together with his friends, but here walking through it's just like it's so he's kind of quiet. He's not a real outgoing guy. He's very, very nice and very he likes people, but he's kind of quiet. So, but yeah, we need.
So if we got him his dance partner, could we get an outro? 2 people, then it's 2.
Can we get a dance partner, Rael?
No.
I got a grin.
He says no.
All right, I'm trying.
Well, good. Yeah, thank you. We'll keep working on them. And let's see, what else do we need to do? So, yeah, well, thank Royal, thank Coach Loretta. I did also want to ask, and I'm going to ask for the next few shows, like we need some new Ornery Mule hashtags. So I'm asking people to help us come up with ideas for some hashtags. You think of like Ultra Shoes, they got one, what is it, hashtag 0 drop or something like that. Like everybody's got these really cool hashtags. We need something new. I do like our keep it, grow the sport, keep it kind, hashtag Ornery Mule Racing. But we need some other ideas. So we're asking people to help us get that. And let's see. Oh, we have a new patron named Turtle.
Turtle, what's up?
Yeah, so
thanks, Turtle.
Yeah, thank you to the patrons. Yeah, we got a Patreon page, and then we do some behind the scene stuff there. Some of it we make where, like Courtney, we made that behind the scenes so everybody can watch it. But some of it it's just patrons only. So just head over there, take a look. There's stuff for everybody, and I think that's it. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Awesome.
And thank you, Greg. It was so much fun. Really, really great show with you.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Crystal and Loretta and Lil Ro. I can't wait to see you guys again when things are calmed down and actually give you all hugs. I miss hugs.
I know, I do too. And high fives. Like I really miss high fives because you have to, because it's like, okay, I can't hug. Oh, I can't high five either.
No, and the elbow thing, the elbow bump thing doesn't have the same kind of anything
it
than
doesn't.
even a high five. I don't know. Yeah, it's just awkward.
Yeah. So, well, hopefully things are turning around. We'll see. Fingers crossed. So, well, thank you, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.